creativity. Why do so many people struggle with creativity? Now, through the application process that we have been forwarding and been using to get people into the Mayorum Society, a lot of people have been forwarding their concerns to me about their problems and their difficulties with being creative. Now, I understand, because when I was a lot younger, when I was 15, 16, I was a very creative individual. I still am, of course, a creative individual. I'm creating things now, I'm creating things out of thin air, all of this type of stuff. But when I was 15, 16, it was interesting because I was very much into music. I was doing a lot of music. Even 14, 13, I was a multi-instrumentalist. I was playing guitar, playing bass, playing drums. I was very good at drums. Beyond the expectations of most people, I was very good. And a lot of my teachers at the time, when I was doing music, they were regarding me as a prodigy of music. When I was getting reviews for my records at 15, people were saying I'm a prodigy. People need to look at this kid. They need to follow him up in 5 years, see what he's doing. I'm doing this now. But in terms of music, people were very interested to see my development. And I was writing records when I was very young, skipping out on school homework to get my records out that I was selling digitally. And quite a crazy little kind of creative journey that I was going on when I was very young, because they tried to, in school, they tried to break you. They tried to make you into a molded machine where you do your homework and you don't do anything else. But they couldn't do this with me. I was always doing music. I was always going on the band camp, trying to check out, how many sales have I got today, this week? I've got 7 digital sales, that's 70 quid, that's nice. And then I'd show my music teacher and she'd be like, yeah, but you need to do the homework, all this crap. And, but anyways, the things, I have a very fundamental understanding of being a creative person. And I understand the situation of what people are forwarding their questions onto me when they're saying, I'm struggling with being creative because fundamentally their ego is in the way. And this is something I can relate to a lot with my own processes of creativity, especially when I was younger. And the idea of the ego in relation to creativity, in a way, you can kind of illustrate this, let's say, in a metaphysical frame. Okay, you've got your ego. The ego sits up here in the air, let's say. It's created from the things in which you exist in and your identity and all of this. It sits up here. And then we see it as the iceberg analogy that Freud uses. And then underneath that, of course, underneath the iceberg, you have the unconscious. And you have the chthonic. You have the miasmic or miasmic, if that's kind of a right terminology. You have the unconscious, godly existence that infuses beauty into other things, or at least it's the thing that is unconscious itself, the river, the ocean imago, these things. And the problem is, creative people who have that spark, that thing which is given to them by God, because not everybody is creative. You cannot just be creative, you have to be given something. And this is not something that you can... It's interesting because there's a direct correlation between the unconscious, or at least something that in which is given to you by something else that is not from yourself, to be creative. And the problem is, most people think that creativity has got to do with their ego, it's about them. It's got nothing to do with you. It's got nothing to do with the person. You are simply a vessel to creativity itself. You are a vessel to any spark of light which comes through you and ascends all boundaries. Because that's what creativity is. It ascends all boundaries and it breaks all the fourth walls that exist in our way. Because that is what is the thing. New creativity, something creative energy changes the foundations of reality and creates something new. And then something overcomes that. And then something overcomes that. And it's a process of change. But what I'm saying here is that you need to have a direct relationship or access point to the unconscious to be creative. And to do this, you have to at least not hold on to your ego and not hold on to this process of being so bothered by judgment from people, being so bothered by what you think other people think you are. This is another thing, because people say, I'm struggling with creativity. But then they also say, well, what do they struggle with? They struggle with being judged. People think that this and that. I have anxiety about being myself. People think that this about me. This is a problem, because you're focusing too much about the ego. And you're focusing too much about what external things think about this thing. You're thinking, oh, judgments. Oh, anxiety because people are judging me. This is what restricts you from being truly creative. Because you're not breaking the shell of your own persona and your own ego to get back into the unconscious so that you can retrieve information from it. Or retrieve information from the heavens, from the gods, from the light source. Because you are a vessel. You're simply a vessel to creativity. And the thing in which comes forth from you is not from you. This is from my experience. Because there was a process in which I would go through when I was a lot younger, regarding creativity, regarding writing music, which had nothing to do with me. It didn't feel as if I was the thing in which was creating the melodies. For example, we know about Transcendental Meditation, mantras. When I was writing music, I would have my computer, I'd have my DAW, I'd write down the rhythm, bass rhythm, drum, I'd play down a drum beat, all that type of stuff, record it, put it into the computer, and then I would loop it. I would loop a section of the music. And this loop is the mantra. And this mantra is the thing that allows you to escape the reality in which you are in now to another reality which ascends or descends into the unconscious, in which you then extract the information from the heavens to make the melody, which is then the thing which makes the song, because the melody is so important. If you don't have a strong melody in a song, you don't have a song, in my opinion, that is good. So, this is a process I would go through, and this is me actually just realizing that this is actually a form of transcendental meditation, because you're looping over, and I would do this for like 30 minutes trying to figure out the melody to this song, and I would feel out the melody. I'm not trying to think what the melody is and process it through like deduction, which so many of these music theorists do. I'm not an advocate for music theory. A lot of music theorists would say, oh, this would sound good, and then they would use the theory to dictate the music in which they are writing and producing. But for me, I would never do this. I would always intuit what would feel right to fit the song. And this is how I would create things. And it's interesting because I am not a person that understands any music theory. And when I was younger, when I was writing songs, writing records, with interesting melodies, beats, rhythms, laying down these things, all this type of stuff, they'd say, well, do you know your music theory? I'm like, no, I don't know any chords on a guitar. I don't know any, but I know how to play all these chords. I don't, jazz chords, sevenths, eighth chords, all these types of strange chords on a guitar. I know how to play them, but I wouldn't know how to identify them in a theoristic way. And this is kind of what made me understand that it's all about the intuition and feeling the music. It's not about constructing what is to be created, but allowing yourself to be the vessel in which the creativity flows through you. And therefore, it's got nothing to do with you. And this is what limits people, I think, is that people think too much about their ego. People think too much about themselves in relation to going forth into the creative process. They need to let go of themselves in the creative process, because it is not you who is dealing with the creativity, I don't think. And of course you get to the point where you've made this thing, you say, I've made this thing, look at it, what do you think about it? And they'll say, oh, it's really good, but I do think there is a humbleness that needs to be accepted within people who are creative, that it wasn't fundamentally them who created that thing, but it was something else from somewhere else which has given you the insight to create it, because you are a vessel to the heavens. And this is where you get to this idea of the muse, the feminine, the anima. Jung talks about it. And it is interesting kind of thing in which is said that, oh, if a man is in association and connection with his feminine, then he is much more of an attractive man than a man who is not in connection with his feminine. And I totally believe that, because you have these archetypes of male seduction, you could say. You have these David Bowies, you have these Prince people, or Jim Morrison, or any of these other musicians that represented something in which they intermingled and interrelated their masculine and feminine to create something very mysterious, because it was a true, honest understanding of themselves and a balance of themselves. This is why people love David Bowie so much, and other people in which embody that archetype of the man, because there's different forms of archetypes, and that's why so many women loved this man. Because Jung was right on that claim that a man who understands his feminine side is much more of an attractive man than a man who doesn't. But ultimately, it's about understanding the feminine and allowing it to guide you, instead of trying to guide what you are trying to guide, and being obsessive over the process of creativity. I truly think that is the case, that it's a process of letting go and allowing something else to guide you from within. And a lot of people refer this to as the muse, the feminine. Because I honestly think that the process of creativity is very feminine, because it is the feminine that creates, that brings creation into existence, for the individual, because it's not from you fundamentally, it's from something else that's higher. And you could say, like, I could also say that my belief in God has got a lot to do with this, or my belief in some sort of higher realm of things has got to do with the fact that there is music, has got to do with the fact that there is creativity, and I mean true creativity. Things that are beautiful, things that associate to these things which are beyond our comprehension, but bring us such deep understanding of what reality truly is. We can't explain away the beautiful things in which we see, because there's something higher about them which we truly don't understand, which makes it beautiful. And I think this is the situation with creatives, is that one needs to adopt the mentality of a meditative monk in the process of creating art. And to understand and be humble as well, because creative people who then stop being humble and start being arrogant then lose their creativity in a way. And I think you could maybe have some of your own examples on that. Can you think of any musicians? Can you think of any artists, any people in that realm where they were so creative, but then the arrogance and their ego got in the way that it stopped them from having a divine relation to the thing in which is not their ego, and then their ego takes over, and therefore their creativity stagnates, and the connection is cut to the thing, the spiritual connection, which gives them their creativity in the first place. Because when they first found their creativity, they weren't arrogant, and they weren't thinking about their ego, and they didn't care about what other people thought of them. And this is the mentality we need to have if you want to be creative. You need to stop thinking about what other people think about you, and you need to be humble in the presence of God. Because if we're talking about God, this is what God is, the thing which ascends through you. So that's my piece on creativity for now. There's probably additional things I'm going to add to this. But people need to be in a state of meditative creativity. And from my experience, that's what it is. It's very interesting because From my experience of being creative, I do feel as if it is not something from me, but some from somewhere else that isn't me. And we have to see ourselves as vessels to that thing in which gives us any kind of gift.